Final Fantasy X centers around a giant whale-like monster that attacks the citizens of Spira, and will continue to do so until they repent for their transgressions against Yevon. Allegedly, this being is appropriately known as Sin. The Yevonites believe that through their atonement, and through the sacrifice of summoners to call forth the final Aeon, eventually, one day, somehow Sin would finally be gone, and Spira would experience a calm that would last for eternity. If you haven't played Final Fantasy X, what are you doing on this video, bro? Leave. And if you have played Final Fantasy X, you'd know this is all a lie. Final Fantasy X is one of the greatest video game stories of all time, but I think if there is any shortcoming in its main story, it fails to do a superb job of explaining where Sin came from, as well as much of the lore behind Yuyvan. Don't get me wrong, I don't think a story should whack you over the head with every bit of exposition that comes by. For example, I would hate for them to explain a cosmic horror like Final Fantasy VII's Genova, who is much better off remaining a mystery. However, I think the lore around Yuyvan and Sin is some of the most deeply fascinating lore in the entire series, but it's only vaguely explored in the game itself. Not only that, there is an absolute narrative genius to the implementation of Sin in Final Fantasy X that I feel goes far too overlooked. So today, I want to take a deeper look at one of gaming's most fascinating forces of nature, Sin. But first, Punishing Gray Raven is a free-to-play, anime-style action RPG known for its fast-paced, ultra-stylish combat, and they're the sponsor of today's video. And now, Devil May Cry 5 is officially colliding with PGR in its newest update, Lamento di Fantasma. Dante and Virgil are joining the roster, and they are more than just cameos. Dante joins the fight as a fire attacker, bringing his signature flair and heavy-hitting style. His twin brother Virgil follows as a physical attacker, known for his precise, lightning-fast Iaijutsu techniques. Voice actors Ruben Langdon and Daniel Southworth reprised their roles, with new voice lines exclusively for this collaboration. They've also brought over signature animations and fighting styles from DMC5, staying true to what makes these characters feel authentic. You can get Dante for free just by playing through the story event Lamento di Fantasma, and if you're aiming for both twins, the collab research banner is discounted. Only 175 R&D tickets per pool instead of the usual 250. Plus, the first 2 times you get Dante and Virgil, you get another copy of them for free. If you're feeling up to the challenge, you can take on the Trial of Simulacrums event, where you'll face off against Mirrored Virgil himself and earn Sandy Spectrum for Echo as a reward. And to top it all off, this update marks Punishing Gray Raven's 4th anniversary. Just log in and you'll get 2,500 R&D tickets, plus tons more rewards. So be sure to check out Punishing Gray Raven with a link in the description or pinned comment below. First of all, to understand Sin, we need to understand the force that created him and the circumstances that necessitated him. Yevon and the Machina War. There's a huge misunderstanding when it comes to Yevon. A lot of people think that he is essentially God, but Yevon is not God. He was actually a very mortal man who lived as a summoner in the real Zanarkand 1,000 years ago, during the Machina War between Zanarkand and Bevelle. And prior to this, it was revealed in the novel Final Fantasy X 2.5, which I know, but this is pretty interesting. It was revealed that while still a theocracy, Bevelle had a polytheistic religion before the creation of Yevonism. At this time, Bevelle was Spira's dominant military power, its capital bristling with advanced machina and weaponry. Zanarkand was ultimately outmatched by Bevelle, and as Bevelle's armies closed in, Yevon saw that his city would fall. So in desperation, he made a horrifying choice. He asked the people of Zanarkand to become faith, sacrificing their bodies and souls so he could summon a dream version of the city, a phantom that would live on even after the real one was gone. But this dream needed protection. To ensure that nobody ever discovered Dream Zanarkand, Yevon twisted the Fireflies into an armor that would serve as a weapon of mass destruction. This armor would be known as Sin, a being that wasn't born out of any sort of malice or evil, but out of a deep fear of death. In trying to preserve this dream, Yevon created an unending nightmare. The first act that Yevon ordered Sin to do was actually to destroy the real Zanarkand. Bavel's ships would actually see this as they approached and realize the terrifying power of Sin. Then he would hide Dream Zanarkand far out at sea, where no one would find it, and if they did, Sin would kill them. Yevon created Sin to run on instincts that drove it to destroy any machina, any technical advancement, or any large cities, all to ensure the continued survival of Dream Zanarkand. The reason that the use of machina is actually bad in Yevonism is because the advancement of machina would lead people to discover Dream Zanarkand, which would be very bad news for Yevon, perpetuating the cycle. The people of Dream Zanarkand are in a sense living creatures sustained by faith powering the city, serving as echoes of the people who once lived there. However, much like memory works in real life, it's never actually exact. As such, the attempt to recreate a man named Yuyvan resulted in our hero, Tetus. Yes, I said Tetus and not Titus. When I put out my essay video on Final Fantasy X, I got a ton of comments on this. In fact, it was half of the comments. I genuinely hate to be the one to break this to you, but that is how it's officially pronounced.
Again, Tetus, okay? Tetus.
Me and Tetus, we are gonna do a little exploring today. But Shining Yuna sounds cool.
Tetus?
白木優奈が正義っぽくない？
Tetus, huh?
This place is kinda dangerous.
Tetus.
But back to our video, Tetus and life on Dream Zanarkand in general is something that deeply fascinates me. Their people seem to live unaware of the world beyond. No one in Dream Zanarkand ever seems to go on vacation. They don't leave the city, nor do they even seem to have the urge to. They seem to exist in this sort of living stasis, unknowingly maintained by the unending prayer of the faith who gave their souls to summon the city. It's important to remember that again, Dream Zanarkand is not in another dimension or some place that's physically separate from the rest of Spira. It is located far away at sea, and anyone who goes near it dies, because sin will kill them. Even Tetus's impression is that he's been transported to another world entirely, just from leaving the city. Everyone lives in this dream created for them with an eerie sense of peace, never seeming to even wonder about the world outside of Zanarkand. This is honestly something that I never really thought much about previously, because if people left Dream Zanarkand, they would quickly find out that Dream Zanarkand was in fact a dream, or that something weird was going on, and that would cause people to want to investigate Dream Zanarkand, which ultimately would end Yuyvan's objective of perpetuating the city for eternity. And though Sin's existence would mean peace for Dream Zanarkand, it would mean the exact opposite for the rest of the world. Yunalesca, the daughter of Yevon, would then find a way to grant the people of Spira a method of temporary reprieve. This would become known as the final summoning. It required a summoner to sacrifice one of their closest guardians to become a faith for the immensely powerful final Aeon, one that was strong enough to defeat Sin. And it couldn't just be anyone, it had to be someone that the summoner had a strong bond with. In addition, it would also cost the summoner their life as well. For Yunalesca, she would sacrifice herself and her husband. But despite all of these sacrifices, this doesn't actually defeat Sin permanently. It forces him into a weakened state where he actually absorbs the final Aeon, and the Summoner's Guardian eventually becomes the new Sin, as we've personally seen with Jecht. This weakened state is what the people of Spira called the Calm, as Sin must first regenerate before he's able to attack. It's also fascinating that the Summoner's Guardian who becomes the final Aeon, and hence Sin, also maintains a bit of their mental autonomy before they become Sin entirely. This is why we see Jecht able to exhibit some control over Sin throughout the game. Sin is built to protect Dream Zanarkand, which is concealed far at sea. However, through Jecht's control, something unprecedented happens. Sin, for the first time, attacks Dream Zanarkand, the Zanarkand that it's supposed to protect. And this would be the beginning of the cycle actually breaking. Then, there's the matter of how Yevonism became a religion to the rest of Spira. And it's kind of hard to not see Bavel as the bad guys in this situation. They appropriated the story of Yevon to create this religion and control the narrative around Sin. This all came after their war devastated Zanarkand, and then they had the nerve to make this a holy site. By exploiting the public fear of Sin, they created a religion that frames Sin as a divine punishment for mankind's transgressions, and the ritual of the pilgrimage and the final summoning as the only hope for salvation. The Calm became a symbol of hope. And when sin inevitably returns, the blame is placed on the people for failing to uphold Yevon's teachings, allowing Bavel to gain even more power. In truth, Yunalesca and the temple leaders always knew sin would come back, but this cycle of hope and despair kept the people obedient and kept Bavel in power. Bavel would do things like ban the use of Machina for the people, all while keeping them secretly for themselves. No wonder they didn't like the Al-Bed for not believing in these lies, more like the Al-Based. And so the entire religion of Yevonism is a cover-up story for the atrocities of war and the creation of sin. Sin in itself also represents something at the core of Final Fantasy X's story, so much so that they named the entire world of Spira after it. That is, of course, the spiral, the cycle of nature and life, the spiral of lies, and how we can actually break some of those cycles. Some for good, like breaking the cycle of lies, and some of those cycles like breaking the span of natural life, like Seymour and Yuyvan wanted to do, being cycles that you shouldn't break. This brings us to an incredibly fascinating parallel with Maester Seymour and Yuyvan. Despite Seymour's heresy against Yevonism, he is someone who deeply understood Yuyvan's vision. As we mentioned, Yuyvan preserved his people by turning them all into faith, and no longer shackling them to the weight of biological constraints like suffering and death. Viewed thus, to die was to be free of death and to experience everlasting life. Seymour realized that he could scale this business. As such, he wanted to take control of sin and save the world through death, believing that only in death could Spira be freed from its endless cycle of sorrow and fear. In his twisted logic, sin wasn't the curse, life was. Sin was the cure, and to become sin was to become an instrument of salvation, ending all suffering by ending all life. In this way, Seymour and Yuyvan shared a same destination. Yuyvan kept this supposed liberation exclusive for his people, and Seymour wanted to democratize it by giving it to all the people of Spira, an entire world of unsent, who would no longer have any pain or suffering to worry about. The story of sin and Yevon is incredibly compelling to me, and it is not really told explicitly in Final Fantasy X. And now that I know it all a lot more clearly, it deepens my appreciation of the game that much more. Leave me a comment below if there's another part of FF10's lore you'd like to see me explore. Be sure to check out Punishing Grey Raven, and I'll see you all in the next video. Later, guys.